The night I walked into his building, I thought the worst thing that could happen was getting thrown back into the rain. I was wrong. By 11:40 p.m., Manhattan looked like it was trying to drown itself. Rain slammed against the glass towers hard enough to blur the lights into long silver streaks, and my sneakers made a wet, humiliating sound every time they hit the sidewalk. I had missed the downtown bus by less than a minute. My phone was sitting at 3%, and the cheap umbrella I'd bought from a corner stand had flipped inside out somewhere around Lexington. So when I saw the marble entryway of a building that looked warmer than heaven and more expensive than my entire yearly rent, I did what any cold, exhausted woman would do. I stepped inside and prayed nobody noticed. The lobby belonged in a magazine spread. White stone floors polished so smooth they reflected the chandelier light. Tall black vases filled with white orchids. A front desk made of dark wood so flawless it looked carved out of one solid piece of midnight. Even the air smelled rich, like cedar and clean linen and money that had never known fear. I stood just past the revolving door, dripping rainwater onto a floor that probably cost more per square foot than the apartment I shared with two other women in Queens. My waitress uniform clung to my skin beneath my coat, damp and cold, and I tucked a strand of soaked blonde hair behind my ear, already bracing for a doorman to tell me to leave. Instead, the man behind the desk glanced up, froze for half a second, and then looked past me. Not at me. Past me. That was when I felt it. The shift in the room. Subtle, but immediate. Like the whole building had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe out. I turned, and he was walking in through a private side entrance with two men several steps behind him. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. Everything around him adjusted automatically, as if the lobby itself understood who mattered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black overcoat darkened by the rain. The kind of coat that looked simple until you realized it probably cost more than my semester of community college had. His hair was slicked back from the weather, his jaw sharp, his expression unreadable. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Cold gray. Calm in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Calm in a way that felt dangerous. I looked away first. I always did around powerful men. It was a habit life had taught me early. Keep your head down. Don't invite attention. Don't become memorable. I moved toward the wall, trying to disappear beside a massive arrangement of orchids, but my wet shoe slipped slightly on the marble and my tote bag slid off my shoulder. It hit the floor with a louder sound than it should have, spilling everything. My wallet, my lipstick, my diner apron, and the small pepper spray canister I kept because a woman getting off work near midnight didn't get to believe in luck for very long. One of the men behind him stepped forward instantly. I bent down fast, my cheeks burning. "I'm sorry," I said, reaching for my things with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. I was just trying to get out of the rain. Silence. Then his voice, low and even. "You picked the wrong lobby for that." My hand stopped moving, but my heart did not. It kept pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat as I knelt on that impossible white floor with my life scattered around me like evidence. The pepper spray was the first thing I grabbed, shoving it back into my bag before anyone could decide what kind of woman carried something like that. A careful woman. A tired woman. A woman who had learned the difference the hard way. When I looked up, he was still watching me. Not the way men usually watched women. Not with curiosity or charm or the cheap confidence I had seen 100 times leaning across diner counters. This was different. Colder. Sharper. Like he was measuring every detail and filing it away for later. I stood too quickly, clutching the strap of my tote with both hands. "I am sorry," I said again, because apologies were sometimes safer than explanations. I just needed 5 minutes to dry off. One of the men behind him shifted, broad shoulders tightening under his dark suit, but the man in the coat lifted one hand slightly, and the movement stopped. That tiny gesture told me more than any introduction could have. He did not raise his voice. He did not repeat himself. He simply expected the room to obey. And it did. The concierge lowered his eyes. The men behind him went still. Even I felt myself holding my breath, waiting. His gaze dropped briefly to the puddle forming beneath my shoes, then lifted back to my face. 5 minutes became memorable the second you walked in through those doors at this hour, he said. His voice was quiet, smooth, educated, with the faintest trace of something old New York and expensive. Do you always make decisions this reckless? Or is tonight special? Under different circumstances, I might have bristled. I might have said something sarcastic. But I was cold, exhausted, and standing in a lobby where every instinct in me was screaming that this man was not someone you challenged for sport. Tonight has not exactly been my best work, I said before I could stop myself. For 1 second, something almost human passed through his expression. Not warmth, not amusement, just the suggestion that he had not expected honesty. Then the revolving door behind me spun again, and a gust of rain-chilled air slipped into the lobby with 2 men in dark jackets. They did not belong. I knew that immediately. They looked around too fast, too sharply, the way people did when they were pretending not to search for someone. One of them held a phone in his hand. The bright screen flashed for half a second, and even from where I stood, I caught a blurred image of a woman in a wet coat entering a building. My stomach dropped so suddenly it felt like missing the last stare in the dark. Me. I did not know who they were. I did not know why they were looking for me. But I knew that picture had been taken outside, probably when I had stopped under the awning trying to force my broken umbrella back into shape. I took one small step backward without meaning to. Gray Eyes noticed. Of course he noticed. Nothing in his face changed, but the air around him went even stiller. He did not turn toward the men at the door right away. He kept his attention on me. Do you know them? He asked. It should have been an easy question. It was not. Because the honest answer was worse than yes or no. I do not think so. I whispered. His eyes narrowed the slightest fraction. Not because he thought I was lying. Because he believed me. And somehow that was more unsettling. He finally turned. One of his men moved toward the newcomers before they could take another step inside. No one shouted. No one made a scene. The conversation happened too low for me to hear, but I saw enough. The fake casual expressions. The quick glance in my direction. The way the stranger at my side slipped one hand into his coat pocket and said something that made the men at the door reconsider every life choice that had brought them here. They left less than 10 seconds later, back into the rain, and the revolving door spun shut behind them. I stared after them, my fingers numb around my bag strap. Who are you? I asked before fear could stop me. He turned back to me, those gray eyes unreadable again. The reason you are not going back outside tonight, he said. Then he looked at the concierge. Send her up. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt longer than it should have, even though the numbers climbed fast in a column of soft white light. I stood in one corner trying not to drip on anything expensive, while one of his men stood in the other like he had been carved out of granite and given a suit. He had pressed the button without speaking and had not looked at me once since we stepped inside, which somehow made everything worse. Silence leaves too much room for fear. I tried to slow my breathing and failed. My phone was dead in my bag. My apartment keys felt suddenly useless. Somewhere below us, the city kept moving through rain and traffic and ordinary Thursday night problems, while I rose farther and farther into a building that did not feel connected to normal life at all. When the doors opened, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The insulated kind. The kind money buys when it wants nothing from the world except distance. The entryway alone was larger than the apartment I shared in Queens. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan in silver and gold, the storm turning the skyline into something blurred and unreal. Dark wood, warm lighting, clean lines, everything sharp and elegant and controlled. There was no clutter anywhere. No shoes by the door. No mail on a table. No signs that an actual human being lived there. It looked beautiful in the same way a museum does. Untouchable. One of the men gestured toward a sitting area near the windows. Stay here. 2 simple words, flat and final. Then he disappeared down a hallway without waiting to see whether I obeyed. I stayed where I was because I was not stupid. Also because there was nowhere else to go. My wet coat felt heavier by the second, so I slipped it off carefully and folded it over the back of a cream-colored chair that probably cost more than my used Honda. My hands still shook. I pressed them together until they steadied enough for me to unclench my jaw. On the coffee table sat a crystal bowl filled with green apples, so perfect they looked decorative. On a shelf across the room stood a framed black and white photograph of the Brooklyn Bridge at night. No family photos. No personal mess. No softness. I was still staring at it when his voice cut through the room behind me. Most people say thank you before they start inspecting my home. I turned too fast. He had changed out of the overcoat, revealing a charcoal suit beneath, the jacket open now, the white shirt beneath it crisp and severe. Without the coat, he somehow looked even more dangerous, more defined, like the rain outside had blurred him and indoor light had sharpened all the edges. Most people do not get brought upstairs by strangers with security teams, I said before I could stop myself. His mouth moved, not quite a smile. Security team. That is a polite way to describe them. He crossed the room with the same unhurried control he had downstairs and stopped at the bar built into the far wall. Drink. I should have said no. I had been taught not to accept things from men I did not know. But exhaustion has a way of stripping life down to the most honest need. Water, I said. He poured a glass and handed it to me himself. I noticed that immediately. A man like him probably had people for everything, and yet he did not call anyone in to do this small thing. I accepted the glass carefully. Thank you. There it is, he said. I was beginning to think. Manners had drowned in the storm. I should have disliked him on principle. Maybe I did. But there was something about the way he spoke that kept throwing me off balance. Not warm. Never warm. But precise. Controlled. Like every word had already passed through several locked gates before it reached the air. I took a sip, then another, suddenly aware of how thirsty I was. Who were those men downstairs? I asked. He leaned one hand against the edge of the bar and studied me over the rim of his own glass. That depends on whether you are asking the question I heard or the one you mean. I swallowed. Fine. The one I mean. His gray eyes held mine for a long second. Someone was looking for you, he said. And I do not like strangers searching my building in the middle of the night. This is your building. It slipped out before I meant to say it. Part of it, he said. No arrogance. No boasting. Just fact. That was the moment something cold moved through me. Not because of the penthouse. Not because of the men downstairs. Because I finally understood the scale of him. This was not a rich man letting me wait out the storm. This was a man the storm itself might have stepped aside for. You still have not told me your name, I said quietly. He set down his glass. Adrian Cole. The name landed between us with more weight than it should have. I had heard it before. Not personally. In fragments. A newspaper headline glimpsed at a diner counter. A customer lowering his voice in a booth. Real estate, shipping, nightlife, influence. The kind of name that appeared in public beside clean business language and in private with a different tone entirely. My fingers tightened around the water glass. He saw the exact second recognition hit. Of course he did. Now, Adrian said, voice calm as winter. Tell me why men with your photograph were waiting in my lobby. I opened my mouth and realized I had no answer that did not sound ridiculous. I was a 24-year-old waitress with wet hair, sore feet, and exactly $87 in my checking account. Men did not usually wait in luxury lobbies for women like me. Trouble did, sometimes. But not men with my picture on a phone. I do not. No, I said honestly. I swear I do not know. Adrian did not interrupt. He just watched me with that unnerving stillness, as if the truth would rearrange itself if he stayed quiet long enough. I set the glass down before I dropped it. I got off work at 10:30. I picked up an extra shift at the hotel restaurant because one of the other girls called out. I took the subway to Lexington, got caught in the storm, and my umbrella broke 2 blocks from here. That is it. That is the whole glamorous story. His expression did not change, but something in the room felt more focused. What hotel, he asked. The Marlowe on 57th. You walked from 57th to here in that weather. I could not get a cab, and no one followed you. Not that I noticed. The last 2 words sat between us like a problem. Not that I noticed. Because suddenly I was noticing too much. The black sedan that had been idling near the curb when I left work. The man across the street pretending to smoke under an awning while glancing up every few seconds. The strange feeling I had outside this building that the city had gone quiet around me for half a beat before the revolving door opened. I wrapped my arms around myself and hated that he saw the second I started replaying it all. What? Adrian asked softly. I shook my head once, then stopped. Maybe nothing. His gaze sharpened. Claire. The sound of my name in his voice startled me. I had not told him. He noticed that too. Your wallet spilled open downstairs, he said. Driver's license. Right. I felt foolish for the brief flare of alarm, but not relieved. Nothing around Adrian Cole inspired relief. There was a car outside the hotel, I admitted. Black sedan. I noticed it because the driver stayed parked in the loading zone even when security started waving people along. I thought maybe he was waiting for someone important. And now, I let out a breath that shook. Now I think maybe he was waiting for me, which makes no sense at all. Adrian glanced toward the windows. rain still streaking the glass in silver lines. Sense is overrated. Patterns matter more. He crossed to a narrow table near the bar where his phone lay face down and picked it up. He sent one message. Nothing dramatic. No raised voice. No urgency. But within seconds, somewhere deeper in the penthouse, I heard movement. Doors opening. Soft footsteps. Quiet efficiency. His world responded faster than most people thought. I am not part of anything, I said, hearing the thin edge of fear in my own voice. I do not know criminals. I do not know politicians. I do not know anyone important. I go to work, I pay rent, I call my mother on Sundays, and I buy generic cereal because the good kind is $6 more. That is my whole life. Adrian looked at me for a long moment. That may be exactly why this interests me. Interests you? I repeated. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. A knock sounded at the penthouse door. One of his men entered, murmured something too low for me to catch. Adrian listened without looking away from me. Then he asked one question. Camera. The man nodded once. Adrian dismissed him with a tilt of his head and set his phone back down. There is footage from outside the building, he said. You arrived alone. 3 minutes later, the same sedan you noticed pulled up across the street. 2 men got out. They waited until you entered my lobby. I slid through me, slow and complete. Why? I whispered. Adrian's face was unreadable again, all hard lines and restraint. That, he said, is what we are going to find out. My legs felt weak enough to fold under me. So I sat because standing there in the middle of Adrian Cole's perfect penthouse, while my entire life tilted sideways, seemed like a good way to faint. The cream-colored chair was softer than anything I owned, and somehow that made everything worse. Luxury has a cruel way of reminding you how far from power you really are. I pressed my palms against my knees and tried to think. Could it be a mistake? I asked. Maybe they had the wrong person. Maybe they thought I was someone else. Adrian stood near the windows with one hand in his pocket. Rain-lit Manhattan stretched behind him like a kingdom made of glass. Possible, he said. Unlikely. That is not helpful. I am not trying to be helpful. I looked up at him, irritated despite the fear knotting under my ribs. Then, what exactly are you trying to be? His eyes met mine. Gray. Steady. Impossible to read. Accurate. The honesty of that should have made me angrier than it did. Instead, it landed somewhere uncomfortably solid. Adrian did not soften the truth. He did not decorate it. In another life, maybe I would have preferred that. In this one, at nearly midnight in a stranger's penthouse with unknown men looking for me downstairs, it felt like standing barefoot on cold stone. I swallowed and forced myself to think past the panic. I did have an odd moment at work, I said slowly. It seemed small at the time. Adrian said nothing. He had a talent for silence that made it feel like a command. There was a private event on the upper ballroom level. Some charity thing. Politicians, donors, men in tuxedos pretending they were better people because there were cameras around. I was carrying a tray back through the service hall when I heard 2 men arguing near the freight elevator. Not loud, just tense. Adrian shifted slightly, the only sign he was listening harder. Did you see them? Only for a second. One of them was older, maybe late 50s, with silver hair and one of those expensive scarves men wear when they want everyone to know they have opinions about art. The other was younger, tall, navy suit, dark hair. I remember his watch because it caught the light. My mouth went dry as I replayed it. I was not trying to listen. I really was not. But I heard one sentence. What sentence? I stared at the floor. Even saying it now made my skin prickle. The younger one said, "Move the ledger before midnight. Cole cannot see it before the transfer." The room went still in a way that did not feel natural. Not the quiet from before. Heavier. Sharper. Like the air itself had locked. I looked up too fast and wished I had not. Adrian had not raised his voice. He had not moved toward me. But something in his face had gone colder than I thought a human expression could go. Not anger exactly. Something more controlled than that. More dangerous because of it. "Are you sure those were the words?" he asked. "Yes." My voice came out thin. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Yes, I am sure." Adrian turned away from the window and crossed the room with slow, deliberate steps. He stopped at the bar, not because he needed the drink already sitting there, I thought, but because men like him preferred to process fury with distance. "You should have said that first," he said. "I did not know it mattered." "Everything matters." He picked up his phone again. This time he made a call. "Jonah," he said when the line connected. His tone did not rise, but every word seemed to tighten the room another notch. "Lock down the ballroom records from the Marlowe. Security footage, vendor access, service hall logs. Tonight only." Quietly, he ended the call and set the phone down with careful precision. "So this is my fault now?" I asked, hating how small I sounded. Adrian turned to face me again. "No, Claire. This is not your fault." It was the first gentle thing he had said all night, and because of that, it hit harder than comfort should have. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Then why do I feel like I walked into something I cannot get back out of? He held my gaze for one long second, and when he answered, his voice was low enough to feel like a secret. "Because you did. Sleep should have been impossible, but shock is a strange kind of exhaustion. It drains you so completely that even fear starts to feel heavy." Adrian must have seen it on my face because a few minutes after that last sentence, one of the staff appeared without sound, as if the walls themselves had sent him. A woman this time, maybe in her 50s, elegant in a dark uniform, carrying folded clothes and a small tray with tea that smelled faintly of chamomile and lemon. "Ms. Bennett," she said gently, and I almost laughed at the absurdity of hearing my last name spoken like I belonged here. "Your room is ready." My room. Not a room. My room. I looked at Adrian, waiting for the correction, the reminder that nothing about this night was normal enough to be claimed. He only nodded once. "Get some rest," he said. "We will talk in the morning." I should have argued. I should have demanded my phone, my freedom, my right to make terrible choices in the rain without ending up under the protection of a man whose name could make an entire room go quiet. Instead, I followed the woman down a long hallway lined with abstract art and soft recessed lighting, past doors closed on secrets I did not want to imagine. The guest room was larger than my apartment. A king bed dressed in white linen. A bathroom bigger than the diner kitchen where I spent half my life refilling coffee. A city view that turned the storm into something almost beautiful. On the dresser sat a charging cord already waiting beside my dead phone, which meant someone had gone through my bag just enough to know what kind I used. That should have unsettled me more than it did. By then, everything unsettled me. The hot shower brought feeling back into my hands first, then my shoulders, then the ache in my feet from 10 hours of smiling at strangers and balancing trays for people who never once looked directly at my face. I changed into the soft gray sleep shirt they had left for me and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone as it flickered back to life. 12 missed texts. 3 from my roommate Jenna asking where I was. 2 from my mother reminding me to bring the pie plate on Sunday. 7 from an unsaved number. I recognized the second I saw the messages. Ethan. My ex had a gift for reappearing at the exact moment life was already unstable. The first text had come at 10:52. "Saw you leave work. We need to talk." The second at 11:06. "Do not ignore me again." The third at 11:18. "You always act like you are too good to answer." The later ones got longer, then softer, which was somehow worse. "You know I worry. Just tell me where you are. Claire. Come on." I stared until the words blurred. Ethan and I had been over for 5 months. Over in the official sense. In reality, men like him think endings are negotiations. He had never hit me. Never done anything that left a mark someone else could point to and name. But there are other ways to make a woman feel managed. Showing up outside work. Calling from different numbers. Telling her she is making things harder than they have to be. I heard a knock at the half-open bedroom door and nearly dropped the phone. Adrian stood there, jacket off. Now, tie on, one hand resting lightly against the frame. He looked less formal and somehow more dangerous for it, as if the public version had been polished smooth and this was the man underneath. His eyes dropped to my screen. He did not ask permission before stepping inside. "That is him, is it not?" he said. I should have been angry. Instead, I was too tired to pretend. "My ex." Adrian held out his hand. "Phone." "Excuse me. You just remembered something important. Give it to me." I stood, sudden heat breaking through the exhaustion. "You do not get to order me around because I am in your penthouse." His gaze did not flicker. "No. I get to order you around because a man you did not mention was tracking your movements tonight while someone else waited downstairs with your photograph." The room seemed to tilt under me. I looked back at the messages. "Saw you leave work." My skin went cold all over again. I thought he was just being annoying, I whispered. Adrian's expression shifted, not softer exactly, but focused in a new way. Claire. He said my name like a warning and a promise at the same time. From this point forward, I need the whole truth. The whole truth. It sounded simple when he said it, which was almost insulting. Men like Adrian always made truth sound clean, like a line item in a report, something that could be handed over without shaking. Mine did not feel clean. Mine felt tangled and embarrassing and far too ordinary to belong in a room like this. I looked down at my phone still glowing in my hand and suddenly hated every message on the screen. Hated Ethan for sending them. Hated myself for not blocking his new number the first time he found a way around the old one. He does this sometimes, I said quietly. Shows up. Texts from numbers I do not recognize. Acts like concern and control are the same thing. Adrian stayed where he was, one hand still on the doorframe, his expression unreadable. How long? Since the breakup. 5 months. I blinked. How did you know that? You said it downstairs in your expression before you said it out loud. It should have sounded absurd. Somehow, with him, it did not. I sat back down on the edge of the bed because standing under that kind of attention felt impossible. Ethan and I dated for almost a year. At first, he was just intense. Flowers at work, waiting outside my shift, texting all day, the kind of thing people call romantic when it happens in movies. I let out a humorless breath. Then he started having opinions about everything. What I wore, which coworkers were too friendly, why I should stop taking late shifts if I respected the relationship. He never yelled in public. That was the genius of him. He always stayed just this side of reasonable. Adrian's gaze sharpened, but he did not interrupt. When I ended it, he cried. I continued. Said he understood. Said he only wanted me to be safe. 3 days later, he was parked outside my building. Then outside the diner. Then outside my friend Jenna's place after I stayed there one weekend. I twisted the phone in my hands until the charging cord brushed my wrist. I kept telling myself it was not serious enough to call the police. That I would sound dramatic. That maybe he really was just having trouble letting go. Adrian finally stepped into the room and closed the door behind him with a soft click that made my pulse jump. Not because it was threatening, because it made the conversation feel sealed. Protected. You minimized it, he said. Women often do when they are deciding whether they have earned the right to feel unsafe. I looked up so fast my neck hurt. No one had ever said it like that before. Not Jenna, who meant well, but always jumped straight to anger. Not my mother, who wanted to believe the world could still be managed with common sense and a church candle. Adrian said it like a fact he had seen too many times. You say that like you understand? I whispered. He held my gaze, then looked away first, which surprised me. I understand patterns, he said, and men who mistake access for ownership. Something in his voice changed on the last word. Small, controlled, but unmistakable. I studied him more carefully then. The loosened collar, the expensive silence around him, the face everyone else probably read as impossible to move. There was history there. I could feel it, even if I could not name it. I did not tell you because Ethan is not the kind of problem someone like you notices, I admitted. He is just a guy with bad boundaries and too much time. Adrian's expression went still again, colder this time. Claire, tonight that man knew where you worked, when you left, and enough about your movements to text you within minutes of your route changing. He took the phone from my hand before I could argue, his fingers brushing mine just long enough to send a strange current up my arm. Not fear. Not exactly. Awareness. That is not bad boundaries, he said. That is escalation. I opened my mouth and closed it again, because hearing the word out loud made everything rearrange itself into something uglier and more real. Adrian looked at the screen, then typed a short reply before I could stop him. My heart lurched. What did you do? He handed the phone back. One message now sat at the bottom of the thread. I am safe. Do not contact me again tonight. You cannot just answer from my phone. I just did. Adrian. His eyes lifted to mine, cool and absolute. If he responds, we learn something. If he shows up, we learn more. My pulse jumped. Shows up where? The faintest shadow of a smile touched his mouth, gone almost before I saw it. That depends, he said, on how badly he wants to test my patience. The reply came in less than 30 seconds. That should not have surprised me, but it did. People who are calm do not answer that fast. People who are waiting do. My phone vibrated once in my hand, loud in the quiet room, and I stared at the screen like it might bite. Ethan, Safeware. Another message before I could breathe. Ethan, Claire, who are you with? Adrian did not need to ask what it said. He read my face the way other people read text. Fast, he said. Too fast. I hated that he was right. Hated even more that some part of me felt relieved not to be the only one seeing what this really was. He always does that, I said. He turns one answer into 10 questions. Adrian held out his hand again, and this time I gave him the phone without arguing. He did not type immediately. He studied the screen for a few seconds, then set it face down on the dresser. No more. Replies tonight. That was your whole plan, I said. Reply and learn something. We learned enough. He turned toward the windows, rain still whispering against the glass, the city below washed in red brake lights and silver reflections. He is not confused. He is not worried. He is locating. The words settled into my chest like a stone. Locating. Not missing me. Not caring. Mapping. Tracking. Narrowing distance. I wrapped my arms around myself and suddenly wished I had kept my coat on, as if fabric could help against the cold that realization brought. Adrian noticed. Of course he noticed. He crossed to a cabinet near the sitting area and pulled out a dark wool throw, then handed it to me without a word. I took it, surprised by the simple warmth of it, by the fact that his version of care came without performance. No soft speech. No sympathy face. Just action. Thank you, I said quietly. You are welcome. The room fell still again. But this silence was different from the earlier ones. Less like a trap, more like a pause between storms. I sank into the chair by the window and pulled the blanket around my shoulders. From here, Manhattan looked unreal, all glitter and distance, like nothing ugly could survive under that much light. I knew better. Adrian stood a few feet away, one hand braced against the glass, and for the first time since I had met him, he looked tired. Not weak. Never that. Just tired in a way that made him seem suddenly, unexpectedly human. You should sleep, I said before I could stop myself. He glanced back at me, almost puzzled, like concern directed at him was a language he did not hear often. I do not sleep much. That is not the same thing. A faint line appeared between his brows. You are in my home because men are looking for you, and you are worried about my rest? You gave me a blanket, I said. It feels rude not to return the favor somehow. For one heartbeat, his mouth almost softened. Then he looked away. You have odd survival instincts, Claire Bennett. That is one way to describe my entire personality. The words slipped out dry and tired, and to my complete shock, Adrian let out the smallest breath of laughter. Not a full laugh. More like the memory of one. But it changed the room. Changed him. Just enough to make me see that whatever darkness followed his name, it had not swallowed everything. My phone buzzed again on the dresser. Then once more. Adrian did not move to check it. Neither did I. Do not answer it, he said. I was not planning to. Good. I looked at him for a long second. You really think he would come here? Adrian's expression turned unreadable again, that brief softness sealing itself away so fast I almost thought I imagined it. A man who believes he still has a claim will go farther than he should, he said. Especially if he thinks someone else has what he wants. The words should have sounded clinical. They did not. They landed with a weight I could not sort through. Before I could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the penthouse door. Not rushed. Not loud. But urgent enough to slice through the room. Adrian was moving before the second knock came. He opened the bedroom door just as one of his men appeared in the hall. He is downstairs, the man said quietly. Adrian's face did not change. Which one? The ex. My breath caught. The man hesitated just long enough for the next words to feel worse. And he is not alone. For 1 second, nobody moved. The rain kept tracing the windows. My phone sat silent on the dresser now, as if it had already done enough damage for one night. Adrian stood in the doorway with one hand braced against the frame, every line of him gone still in that dangerous way I was beginning to understand. Stillness was never softness with him. It was calculation. The man in the hall waited, professional and unreadable, while my pulse climbed so hard I could hear it in my ears. Who was with him? Adrian asked. 2 men from the sedan, the guard said. They are claiming they are here to make sure Miss Bennett gets home safely. I let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, except there was nothing funny in it. Ethan would say something exactly that polished. He always preferred concern when control needed a cleaner suit. Adrian turned his head slightly, enough for me to see the profile of his jaw tighten once. And downstairs. Secure. Keep it that way. The guard nodded and disappeared without another word. Adrian closed the bedroom door and looked at me. No alarm in his face. No rush. Somehow that steadied me more than comfort would have. You are not going downstairs, he said. It was not a suggestion. I was not planning to. Good. He crossed the room and picked up my phone from the dresser, silencing the fresh wave of messages that had begun to light the screen. Then he set it back down and faced me fully. I need you to listen carefully. I nodded before I realized I was doing it. Ethan did not find you on his own. He was already tracking you. The men from the sedan were already watching this building. That means one of two things. His voice stayed even, but every word landed with quiet force. Either your ex attached himself to people he does not understand, or someone else realized he was useful and followed the thread back to you. Because of what I heard at work, I said. Adrian did not blink. Yes. The room seemed to narrow around that one answer. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and tried to breathe through the sudden pressure in my chest. All night, I had wanted this to become smaller, simpler, a misunderstanding, a rain-soaked accident with dramatic lighting. Instead, it kept unfolding into something colder and more deliberate. So what happens now? I asked. Adrian looked at me for a long moment, and I realized that for the first time since I had met him, he was choosing how much truth to give me rather than whether to give me any at all. Now, he said, they wait downstairs and learn that my lobby is not public property. My people identify the two men with Ethan. We pull the camera logs from the Marlowe. We find the ledger before anyone moves it. He paused, then added in a lower voice, and you stay where I can protect you. The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because he said them without charm, without trying to make them sound tender. Just fact. Just decision. I stood slowly, the blanket slipping from one shoulder, and met his eyes. You do not even know me. I know enough. Enough for what? I asked. Enough to know you walked into a war you did not start. His gaze held. Mine, calm and absolute. And enough to know I do not leave innocent people exposed once they are inside my walls. Something in me shifted at that. Small, dangerous, impossible to explain. Not trust. Not yet. But the first fragile outline of it. Because all night Adrian had been many things I should have feared. Ruthless, controlling, unreadable. But he had also been precise and careful and more honest than the men who had claimed to love me. A soft knock sounded again, lighter this time. Adrian opened the door halfway. The same guard murmured, "He is becoming agitated." Adrian's expression did not change. "Then he can leave agitated." The guard hesitated. He asked for proof that she is safe. Adrian glanced back at me. 1,000 responses lived in that silence. The easy one would have been no. The safer one, probably also no. But something in his face settled into a decision so final it made the room feel colder. "Bring him to the private monitor feed," Adrian said. "Let him see the penthouse sitting room." My breath caught. Adrian. He looked at me, and for the first time his voice softened just enough to feel personal. "He wants proof, Claire. Let us give him a version of it." I stared at him, suddenly understanding. Ethan would see me safe, warm, untouched by panic, standing in a world so far beyond his reach, it would say more than any warning ever could. "Not yours. Not anymore." Adrian stepped closer, close enough that his voice dropped below the storm against the glass. "When that camera turns on," he said, "stand beside me and do not look afraid."